Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Today we're going to watch the first semi-finals game of the Minsk Shogi Classic between two strong players. Now you can see on the left side the champion of Belarus, Vincent Tanyan, fifth Dan, and on the right side is a Russian player, very strong player. His rank is third Dan, and of course his name is Denis Titov. You might know him from yesterday's game when he beat Alexander Korolov. And in general, the game is interesting because both of these players met each other a year or two ago in Minsk Shogi Cup, and Denis managed to beat Vincent. And I believe their results in games against each other are 1-1 at this point. So this game is very important in terms of this tournament, and also it's important for their personal achievements. So the game is principal, and it will be interesting to watch. That's why welcome. You're all welcome to this stream, and let's see where it's gonna go. The players shake their hands and the game starts. We're expecting to see some kind of a ranging rook from Vincent, and most likely Denis will go for a static rook. And surprisingly, Denis goes absolutely against all our expectations. Seems like he prepared for this game, and he decides to go for an Ishida tactics, for an Ishida opening. Let me quickly set up the position on the board. Vincent Vincent brings his silver general to 6-7 and pushes his 5-7 pawn. So it most likely he is going for a Takada strategy, which was designed specifically for against the ranging rook. Usually the way it works, this rook is going to be moved to the 8-8 square, and the king will be castled not on the right side but further away from the goddess attack on the left side. So probably Denis will just go for the castle, send want to move all the pieces from the 8th horizontal to make way for the rook. And after this formation is built, both of these generals go here to play in defense against the third file rook attack, and the king castles on the left side. For Gotha, the plan is pretty typical. It's typically Shida when you float your rook on the 4th horizontal, maybe bring your bishop on this diagonal, and use your silver in attack. Denis knows that Takada takes some time to be built, so no surprise he chooses a slower castle but more defensive. He has time for that. So Denis goes for an Aguma, and Vincent just builds the Takada system. It's gonna be quite an unusual game because it's not many people who play Takada in Minsk. Mostly it's only Vincent. And it also looks a lot like Denis made his homework in terms of this match, and he doesn't look confused at all. He knows what he's doing. He went against his usual strategies. It's interesting to watch so far. It's actually interesting that the engine was suggesting the king to castle on the right side. It shows how different human shogi are from the computer's perspective. But of course, Vincent's plan is very different from what the engine suggests. His further moves are going to be king 7-8, this is what he does, and then he's gonna push his generals further closer to the middle with his silver perfect spot at 5-7 and gold perfect spot on the square 5-8. Meanwhile, I'm just trying to recreate this position on the board. Sorry, it takes some time. Still near the opening, equal position. But that's very interesting that the engine keeps suggesting moving the king further away from the rook. I guess it evaluates position based on the proverb, which says exactly this thing, to keep your king away from the rook. But this is the trick about this opening, and at the same time its weakness. The king is far away from the opponent's ranging rook in Takada, but at the same time, if the opponent manages to reach the king, it's very vulnerable. Sorry. Right, this is the first time Denis takes time to think a bit more on his next moves. But I think he still knows that all he needs to do is to finish his Anaguma and bring all the attacking pieces closer to the Santa's camp. Surprisingly, engine prefers this position for Denis, even though Takada is meant to be an anti-ranging rook strategy. According to the engine, it's not that good. However, Vincent has a long story of using it in lots of tournaments against different players. He feels this position, he knows it well, and this is his advantage about that. So even though it might be not the optimal one, he knows all the tricks about this opening. He knows how to use it right. This is the position we have so far. It's not much both sides can do. Denis is gonna just continue building his castle. Santa almost finished their defensive formation, and I'm expecting them to start building an attack on the goddess king, and they're most likely to bring their silver up, but they're gonna finish the castle. And usually what Santa likes to do is to open this diagonal for bishops and bring the silver up. However, in this case, I think center should be okay with trading bishops because their camp is pretty safe. But if Goto don't go for it by just declining the exchange, this silver is gonna be very dangerous in the attack. So this pawn is gonna be traded, and it will be a big weakness for the Goto side in the late game. And all the main ideas revolve around advancing this silver. Takada seems like a really good choice against Ishida because Ishida usually aims for early exchanges, early trades, and trying to apply pressure on the static rook to aid a lot of different pins with this bishop. However, Takada ruins all of that, and Ishida has to follow the rules of the other side and to adjust their playstyle from aggressive to a more positional one. Vincent chooses an interesting continuation. So instead of advancing the silver, he rotates his bishop and brings the knight to the attack. At the same time, Denis goes for a better defense in this case. Modification of Anaguma, which is better for the front attacks. Usually when you play Anaguma, you expect the opponent's rook to be on this flank, attacking from the side. But since Vincent rotated his rook from to 8 to 8-8, the attack comes from the top of the king's head. And then it chooses a more defensive castle for these cases. Sorry, the order of the moves was probably a little bit different, but this is the position we have so far. So Vincent went for an interesting strategy. He decides to use this somewhat castle knight in the attacks, and he's looking for a better spot for his bishop. And probably his idea is to move his bishop on this diagonal and to aim directly on the king. This makes a lot of sense because it's very likely that at some point the silver will be forced to move, and as soon as this bishop is on 4-6, it wouldn't be very comfortable for white to defend against all of these attacks. This is just a proof of what we've been discussing, that Vincent knows all of these schemes. He knows the weak spots, the common weak spots in these positions, and he goes directly for them. While it seems like for Denis, it's not very clear how to what to do with his Ishida formation. And just a quick reminder that this tournament is probably one of the most complicated ones because of the many qualifications. I mean, like satellite tournaments and Now it's playoff, and the winner of these playoffs gonna compete for the title with the current title holder Anton Stirkevich. So it's like a lot of steps to actually get to the finals. So it's tiring, exhausting, and also each game takes 1 hour of the main time for each player and 1 minute of additional time. So the time control is probably one of the biggest when it comes to. I mean, it's the biggest for Minsk tournaments, and I would say even in Europe it's not common to have these big time controls, relatively big. So it's always a challenge for players. It's a long run. But at the same time, big time controls allow us to see more quality games and be ready that in the mid game sometimes it takes time, position doesn't move anywhere, but that's only because players can afford making these slow moves and think on the position. They look for different weak spots and try to overplay their opponents at every single move. So now the edge pawns were pushed. Vincent brings his rook to the bottom line to defend in the future against different random drops, like silver or bishop drops on 4-9 common tactics. Just simple preventive moves. He's trying to solidify his position. Probably. Yeah, so before starting the attack, just trying to make sure that the camp is covered. Meanwhile, Denis silver is very undeveloped on 3-1. That's why the engine suggests moving it up and joining the attacking forces. The problem still remains the same. Denis's attack is not even close to be ready. To bring the general closer to the fight, somewhere to square 3-6 will take like 5 moves or so, and even after that it's too far away from the king. So Denis' plan from now on should be based mostly on counterattacks or trying just to defend Vincent's attack if he'll start it. Did I miss any moves? Check real quick. Oh yeah, I did actually miss one move. Yeah, Dennis pushed this pawn on 1-5. I don't think it's gonna matter because it's way too far away from the opponent and Vincent pretty much doesn't care about it. Let's see the comments. Yeah, somebody's advising me. Talks about the main legs idea. It's to push pawn 6-5, silver 5-5, 6-6. Yeah, I think we already kind of discussed it earlier. That the main attacking idea is bringing this silver to this point, and after that trying to do the trades or more if possible. So something like that. So also I think rotation of this bishop might end up on this 5-7 square, and it's pretty possible that the trade of pawns will happen here, and center will try to apply some pressure on knight 3 square. However, we don't know that yet, and you never know what's in the player's head. Yeah, we can see Denis is carefully calculating the lines, trying to figure out what to do next. Denis has already spent more than 15 minutes, quite a lot on this position, and Vincent only spent 5. So even though Denis was trying to surprise Vincent, he didn't really manage to achieve that. And so after long considerations, Denis realizes that his silver is well undeveloped. He decides to simply push it towards the 4-2 square. The engine suggests different ideas now for Vincent. One of them, of course, pushing the attacking silver from 4-8 to 5-7. But there are some other ideas of pushing the pawn on 4-6, and probably just moving his silver from 4-8 to 4-7 to create this castle in the middle with all of the pieces defending each other like perfect synergy. So I guess the engine always tries to build the most stable position, and its suggestion is building this kind of castle, a zigzag castle. However, it's not likely Vincent will go for that. His plan is simple, is bringing this silver up. Okay, I'll be right back in a minute. Vincent chooses another engine's line and hit his 2-6 pawn. I wonder what the idea is behind that. But seems like the following moves, according to the engine, are still the silver push. Okay, sorry, seems like I had some problems with my internet connection. It looks a lot like pawn to 6 is a common idea. So it prevents of the further attacks, I believe, with the knight. And it's also not easy to take it by the rook, because this move is not possible. The bishop will take and things like that gonna happen. Trying to make this trade and move the rook is not working also, because this gold is gonna join the attack with the bishop, and this rook might be captured later. I believe this kind of advancement is possible. However, Denis chooses to go for this line. Seems like he wants to try his luck here. And the engine even suggests not taking the pawn straight ahead, but to simply move their gold on the squared, which means in freed turn go. The idea is, I guess, to join this counter-attack with the rook. So if sent to take, I think both taken with any of these generals might be a valid option. But Vincent chooses just to take it. And he's probably going to push his gold in general. This is the variation we looked at earlier. And you can see that what Denis achieved here, he just gave Vincent the chance to advance his generals closer to the center, and this is reflected on the engine evaluation results. You can see that Vincent is leading by 6% now, actually by 10%. It's not that many options for Denis. It's mostly just an extremely unexpected move. So Denis decides that the difference in castles allows him to sacrifice his rook for the gold. However, it seems like he overestimated what he can do in this position, and the engine shows that Vincent is 67% favorite now. The problem with the sacrifice is that there are a lot of spots for the rook drop now in the Gota's camp, and it's absolutely not much Santa can do with the gold. Even dropping here is not a big threat. It's just gonna trade the generals, and yeah, to be honest, it's not very clear what Denis is going for in this position. Denis tries to bring as many pieces to the attack as possible to gain even more material. But it seems that simply pushing this general here is fine. It threatens the knight capture, so Denis will have to react and defend it with a pawn. And after that, Santa might consider. Actually, this move wouldn't work because of this rook capture. So what Santa might try to do is to maybe bring the rook here, and even if Gotha try to defend the camp, they can simply promote with these threats. Yes, sorry, I wasn't showing the screen. Yeah, but what I was talking about is actually happening, that Denis has to defend the knight here, and this drop doesn't work because of the rook capture. That's why I think turns drops like this are possible. So Gotha have to defend one of the pieces, most likely with some turn like this one. And this promoted rook is a big threat. It might capture. No, it cannot. It works well both, I would say, in attack and in defense. If Gotha go for the material gain here, this pawn drop would just ruin the whole right flank of the Gotha's camp. Vincent is already big time favorite. He has a lot of moves to think about, both drops and just another turn suggested by the engine is simply bring the rook from this kind of a useless spot right now closer to the attack, and to force Gotha to play in defense. After that, stopping this rook of promotion is almost impossible, and Gotha don't have enough pieces to recreate any meaningful attack. Other interesting move suggested by the engine is this pawn drop. The idea is that if the rook is dropped on 4-1, this defense is not possible anymore. So pretty much we can see that Vincent has 3 different attacking ideas. Some are better, some are worse, but pretty much all of them achieve the same. He's dominating the field significantly. It's really not clear how to shake up the position for Gotha here. This bishop is out of play. This king is in safety. So I think it was a big blunder by Denis when he went for the rook sacrifice. As you can see, Vincent still has 47 minutes. He has plenty of time to make sure just saves his win in this game. For those who've just joined our stream, this is the first semifinals game in Minsk Shogi Classic tournament. Yeah, and Vincent makes a very logical move. He simply moves his rook. This turn is very powerful because, first of all, Vincent activates his inactive piece instead of dropping those in hand, keeping them for the attacks, for the further attacks. Now Gotha is kind of forced to defend. The most straightforward thing would be just to cloak the third file, but this would mean probably a total game over for Gotha. They still wanna keep some attacking ideas. A cheaper defense is moving the silver general on 3-3, but Santa have these pawn drops here, so there are different options, or maybe even simply bring the general. After that, actually, the rook drop is possible as well, and this defense doesn't work anymore since the silver general moved. This rook can get promoted, and all these pieces are gonna be pinned to each other, and this is a good opportunity, further opportunity for Santa to gain some material. However, maybe this line is not the best since there is this move, but I guess things like that might work. Not sure. Denis went for the bishop defense, and now the engine simply suggests the rook drop on 2-1 with the idea of promoting and potentially. Let me actually show you. So this drop doesn't work because of this promotion, and you've got to do some kind of useless move. This will lead to the loss of material for Gotha, like this. And this is exactly what Vincent does. It's not easy to defend the Goddess camp at this point, and that's why you can see the engine suggests dropping the Golden General on 3-2, which would mean no more attacks for Gotha for a very long time. Maybe they will never be able to attack anymore, but this is the only move which can kind of stabilize the camp. The idea here is that this rook cannot go anywhere, so it cannot promote here the gold defense. It cannot promote here because of this trap. And of course it cannot take the lands because of the bishop's defense. But this is a very difficult move to make. It makes Denis to end up without any pieces in hand, not counting the pawn. There are some other desperate ideas here. Like trying to get at least some material. Attacking the rook here. The rook will have to move, for example, here, and trying to get at least some pieces in hand. Looking for some trades. But in this case, this horrific attack comes. Denis makes this tough move. Seems like he has no much choice. And in this point, Vincent already achieved everything he wanted. He's pressuring the Goddess camp. His position is pretty balanced. There are no threats against Santa here. So Vincent might try to start destroying the Anaguma castle by sacrificing the pawn on 8. Since Gotha don't have any more pieces, is to simply move the silver like here, and to take the knight, which cannot do anything for the attack now. So this knight is dead sooner or later. Yeah, seems like after this gold drop, there are no moves for Gotha to improve their position. All they can do is just wait for Santa to take their knight, and that's about it. Okay, so I'll just leave you with this position for a couple of minutes. And I will be right back in a while. Hello everyone, I'm back. So for those who've just joined, welcome to the stream. Currently you can see the first semifinals game between Vincent and Denis. A very important game for both of them. Firstly, in terms of the tournament, it's getting closer and closer to the main fight for the title. And secondly, so far their results against each other are one win for Denis, one win for Vincent. And last time they met, Denis managed to beat Vincent and actually win the Minsk Shogi Cup some time ago. Currently, we've seen that Denis made a mistake by trading his rook for the golden general, and Vincent is leading with some major advantages. However, both of the players are running out of time, and so both of the players are running out of time, and the more and more opportunities for the mistakes are opening. Hello Sergey, thank you for joining today again. So Vincent went for this edge attack. According to the engine, it's not the strongest continuation, but still it might make the difference later in the game when the Anaguma castle is going to be a target of the Santa's attacks. Let me make some announcements. Seems like it's working. Right, so this is the game we're watching right now between Denis and Vincent, and the winner of this game will play in the finals of these playoffs. And tomorrow we are going to watch a quarterfinals game between me and Evgeny Klitsky. It's gonna be streamed as well, and it will be some commentary by Anton Starikevich in English first time, so stay tuned. Kaczynski Sergey won't play against Shcheslenak Petr because Petr moved to Poland and cannot participate in this tournament anymore. So the winner of this game gonna meet Sergey in the semifinals. Yeah, so this is the current position. Vincent is preparing the edge attack, but it also creates some weaknesses in his castle. So you can see that this king doesn't have any more defense on the left side besides the lands. The rook has swing to the third file, and this might be pretty helpful for Gotha when the trade's gonna happen. This is a pretty difficult position for Denis. It's not much he can do. Mostly his playstyle for the next moves, for the next like 10-15 moves is just a waiting style, so he should wait for some mistakes or some opportunities for counterattacks. He desperately needs some trades, and yeah, you can actually see how difficult it is for him right now. So no attacking ideas, and in such situations you just need to find some good waiting moves which don't affect your position, and wait for the opponent's attacks. Yeah, we all gonna miss Petr, of course, but you shouldn't worry that much. He's most likely gonna participate in European Shogi Championship, which gonna take place just in 10 days, and a lot of Belarusian players gonna meet him here, and we're gonna see some games from him as well there. You see, Petr is here with us. Don't need to worry. I don't know. We should find only good things in this negative news. So if Petr was still in the tournament, he would beat us all, of course. That's why he gave us a chance actually to continue our participation in Minsk Shogi Classic. Both players still have a lot of time. This is a tournament with big time controls. Vincent still has 25 minutes, while Denis has 19. Since the game is getting closer and closer to the end game, this should be more than enough. Moreover, the additional time is 1 minute per turn, which is not much, but it's more than we're used to. It's usually just 30 minutes, so here we have like double that time. Of course, this improves the quality of the end games a lot. And it's much more entertaining for us, which is always good. The game started way too early today, so I'm pretty surprised that some people found that internal energy actually to join to our stream. So thanks a lot for joining, and of course for those who didn't manage to come in time, it's gonna be a recording of this game on our channel. Yeah, so as we discussed earlier, it's pretty difficult for Denis to play any defensive moves since all his pieces are already in perfect positions, and moving any of them might only make his position worse. So he's looking for some kind of counterattacks and drop his pawn to move the opponent's rook from this really good spot on the bottom line. Let me show you. So this rook works really well on the bottom line. It's ready to get back in the castle at any moment. So Denis tries to bring it up, keeping in mind two things. That first of all, this rook cannot quickly return into the castle anymore. And second of all, it creates this idea for future drops if somehow he manages to trade the silver for the knight. However, since Denis doesn't have any pieces in hand, it's very easily can be avoided by Vincent by just first of all taking the pawn, and after Denis makes some other move like that, he can easily just move it somewhere away to a safer spot and it wouldn't be much of a threat. However, it might be too slow in this case. I think also Taken has another idea in mind. So if Denis takes this pawn, I think Vincent wanted to go for this trade and try to capture the lands, but it doesn't work in this scenario because, I mean, it works, but not as good as it would be with the rook on the 3-9. In this case, these tactics work, which is not very pleasant for Santa, but of course not disastrous either. That's why Denis does this drop to gain some advantages further along the game. The engine suggests just taking the pawn and not worrying about all those silver drops later in the game. So according to the engine, the continuation should be rook takes, not the drop, and trade here. I think taking with the rook should be absolutely fine here, since Gote only have a knight in their hand. After that, I think a lot of attacks from Santa might happen, like even this one looks pretty dangerous, because if this silver falls, there is this rook promotion, this rook threat all the time. However, because Vincent weakened his left edge, Gote might just try to ignore this knight attack and go straight ahead for the pawn promotion. However, I'm afraid it's not quick enough, and Santa should have more than enough time to gain a lot of advantages from these trades. So position is still beneficial for Santa. Vincent is 20% favorite. Denis somehow managed to get into this very tough position where he doesn't really have any good moves, and the best he can do is just to keep position the same without so he has to make only precise moves where his position doesn't get worse, which is quite difficult. So he might even think of repetition. Since it's hard to improve Goda's position, I think the best he can do is just to keep moving this gold while Santa keep attacking, and wait for the piece trade so he can start building his own attack on the Santa's king. He's considering whether he should take this pawn or not. It's always a valid, absolutely valid turn just to return his rook back into the castle and to keep attacking the left edge. However, he might be seeing that taking a pawn is pretty safe, and he's just trying to figure out pros and cons for both scenarios, calculating deeper in the lines. The thing is, whatever he chooses, the advantage is still on his side. Yeah, so he decides just to go for a safer option and returns his rook back. Denis takes some space around the left edge, which is both a good thing and a bad thing. So it's more space for him, more pieces in hand, but he of course weakens his castle. And Vincent goes for the tactics we discussed earlier to take these lands. Defending it is not an easy task because he Denis either has to move his silver up, which will weaken the Anaguma a lot, or to drop another piece. And of course, this piece on the board is much worse than in the hand. Moreover, attacks like that are possible. All of these attacks are pretty efficient because besides that, there is always this rook's pressure on the right side. By leaving this pawn here, Vincent also achieved another thing. This turn is not possible anymore until this pawn is on 3-8. So this rook is pretty active, even without promoting on 4-1. Yeah, that's why you can see that the engine suggests just to sacrifice the pawn on 3-9, because it will allow to do the bottom pawn after that. And since it's here, it's not possible yet. So the engine line is actually not to drop the silver, to keep it in hand, and to use the castle silver, not to give away the material for nothing. I wonder what might be the continuation here. So maybe it should be just fine to take some time for Vincent and to rotate the bishop here. Or maybe things like that, because obviously one lance is not enough to get through the defense. Let's say if Vincent goes for this move, what center can do, what Gotha can do here. And seems like not much. I don't know if they try to gain some material here. This might be too dangerous. Oh yeah, so actually this bishop works really well here, because if it takes the silver, there is this pin, so Gotha should be extra careful about it and probably think of moving this gold in defense, or even better, to get the king closer to the silver in order to defend it. And all of this looks very dangerous for Gotha. I think the sacrifice is still possible. Taken with the knight is dangerous because of the silver drop after that. and it's gonna be a checkmate, I believe. And a simple checkmate. That's why the king has to take, and this leads to this promotion. So I think bringing this bishop to this diagonal has a lot of potential and will force Gotha to drop their silver in defense, or something around these lines. However, Vincent goes for a more straightforward plan. What he does, he simply trades here. Actually, wait a second. Let me see the position. Yeah, so actually Denis decides to go for a safer move order, and he drops his silver. Vincent trades here and drops his lands, attacking both bishop and the gold. The problem here again that since this pawn is on 3-8, it's not possible to defend. So Denis decides to keep his bishop and to trade the gold for the lands. Probably not the most precise attack order by Vincent, because he gave some pieces in hand to Denis, but it's still absolutely fine. And moreover, we can see that Vincent is 82% favorite now in this tournament. I mean, in this game. Then he simply escapes his pieces. This promoted rook is way too dangerous now in its castle, in its camp. It's almost impossible to stop it. But at the same time, Vincent doesn't have many attacking pieces. He desperately needs some material. That's why the engine suggests either, let me show you. So since Vincent needs material, the engine suggested two ideas here. Either attacking these pieces, moving any of them is bad because the other one is going to be taken. So defending here is difficult, and this forces this gold to move and creates weaknesses in the Anaguma castle. And the other idea is the one we discussed earlier, is bringing this bishop to the attack. Vincent chose to trade this pawn while it's possible, and this allows him to activate the rook as well. So he did it instead of moving the rook right here. Ignoring this pawn might be not that good, because it will create a very strong vanguard on 8-4. It's like best case scenario, and worst case scenario it might even make possible some sacrifices with further strong attacks. Not right now, but might be later. But I guess even this is pretty good for center. So I guess taken is the only option, and let's see what Denis decides to do. Yeah, so Denis simply takes, the rook takes. But I'm not sure whether it was necessary pawn push. It allows, of course, for center to trade this pawn to get it in hand. But at the same time, it makes Gota's castle more balanced. Since center have only one lance, the things do not work anymore, and I would say that the attack on the edge is stopped at this point. So center should, after these trades, just again go for these moves and should try to find some material somewhere. Also, actually, a plan for center might be just to stop here after gaining a lot of advantages and to make sure first that their camp is safe, take this pawn and rebuild the camp, maybe join with another rook here and go for the second attempt to invade the Gota's camp. It's hard to say whether Denis was ready for Takado or not, but he definitely underestimated the strength of his camp when he was trading the rook for the center's gold. So I think it's more of a tactical mistake rather than strategical. Yeah, so we see in the game the position we've just discussed. So those we've just seen, and yeah, Denis improved his castle, but there is still a big problem for him on building his own attack, and all he can do is just to wait for that moment when he runs out of all the pieces around the castle. There is an interesting idea suggested by the engine here. This pawn drop. Ignoring it leads us to again this position, which doesn't look well for Gotha. So Gotha has to take it. And here the engine suggests to jump with the knight. Let's see why blocking it doesn't work here. Even though it's only one pawn in hand, Santa can get one more from here. And after that, attacks like this are possible. Maybe this. So taking with the knight is dangerous because of the silver drop. And I don't know, there are like these moves here. Maybe simply firstly take here, then maybe take here, and these kind of tactics. Yeah, I don't know. So of course it requires some calculations, but seems like it's gonna lead to the Anaguma being demolished. pretty difficult to calculate, so I wonder whether Vincent is going to go for it. But he is of course capable of building such attacks. However, he doesn't hurry up with that, and he does the turn we've been discussing before, so simply moves his rook, attacking both explicitly the silver and implicitly the bishop. And their only move actually to defend both pieces is to move this golden general away from the castle, which of course doesn't make it easier position for Denis. Even though Vincent is leading, he has a big lead. He has less time, and it's only 8 minutes left for him, while for Denis it's 11. So not much more, but it might make the difference at some point. It's not always easy to attack the Anaguma castle, and there is still some room for the mistakes here. At this point, the engine still suggests the pawn drop on a5, and arguably it might be even better now since the golden general is away from the castle. Yeah, and Vincent decides to go for it. Of course, Denis has to take. He will probably spend some more time to make sure he can do that, but it's not really like he has an option here. Yeah, we've already discussed what it can lead to, but we'll look for maybe some other lines in a while. Thanks everyone for the comments. It's very pleasant to know that you're enjoying the stream. For those who just joined, I'm reminding you that this is the semifinals game in Minsk Shogi Classic tournament, and actually you can see it on top of your screen. Of course, Denis takes back, and I'm expecting Vincent to take it with the knight. Yeah, this is what he does. And now the only options for Denis are to defend, and Vincent will go for his final attack at this point. Vincent is already almost 90% favorite. Before dropping the pawn on 8-4, the engine suggests dissorting Santa's camp by dropping some pawns in front of the rook. I don't think it's gonna change anything here, but in case if Vincent makes a mistake at some point, it might be helpful later. So instead of dropping it straight away, the engine suggests moves like that. Of course, taken with the king is not very good since this rook is blocked. So the only option here is taken with the rook, and one of the thread here is on the same diagonal with this bishop. And some other ideas might be just keep bombarding it, maybe dropping the knight with the idea of dropping these lands at some point, if for example Vincent makes a mistake and drops his pawn here. Running out of water, but probably won't go away from the screen since we're getting closer and closer to the end game. Seems like Denis made his move. So Denis decided to reinforce his castle by dropping lands back here. While this knight is looking at a3, this lance is always a target of attacks like this one. So I'm not sure whether it was... oh, sorry, you cannot see it. Yeah, so while this knight is on the 8-5 square, this lance is always vulnerable to these pawn drops. So not sure whether it was a good decision. And actually the engine just suggests going for this attack straight ahead. I would say that probably it even makes it easier for Vincent, who was going for these drops anyway. Yeah, so Vincent drops the pawn, Denis takes it, take, and now you can see that the game is already won for Vincent. And almost any move here is a good move. Is how it looks. Yeah, it is. So the engine has two ideas here, either taking this general straight ahead, or there is this immediate threat. Ignoring it is dangerous because it might lead to an easy checkmate, and taking it creates this threat of checkmate again. So defending both this threat and this general is not possible. And say if Denis, let's say, goes for this move, this will end up really bad for Gotha. Vincent chooses to take the pawn first. It's a valid move as well. At least it doesn't make it worse. So here Denis of course has to defend somehow with the pawn either here or here. Let's say he goes for this move. And again, the same threat is still possible. So this move is more like a pass for me. Both players still have some time before the additional time starts. Yeah, I think Denis notices the threat of the gold drop, and he tries to block the rook's line. So you remember this is what Vincent was threatening, and Denis decides just to block this rook, and it allows also to recapture with the knight if the lance takes. So I guess Vincent is of course going for it, and there is this nice move here to make the way for the rook. This one together with drops like this one. The silver cannot take because of the drop. So this knight has to escape and pawn promotion comes. But there is also an option of... actually this is too slow because of this move. At least it seems like. Yeah, so still a lot of attacking possibilities for Vincent after this capture. The engine simply suggests dropping the pawn on 8-4, creating a vanguard there, and drop the generals. This will lead to position somewhat like that, a mat trade, so just take. Yeah, and it's game over. So this position is already kind of forced by Vincent, and seems like the only reply here is to sacrifice material in order to stay alive. And after that, maybe lance drop. Yeah, and this is exactly what Vincent does. Yeah, Denis has to sacrifice the silver. Of course, he's gonna block the rook now with a pawn drop on 8-3. It's not a big problem. There is this move here, and the only way to defend it is probably moving this gold. But there is this drop after that. So as you can see, Denis doesn't have any more generals to defend his king, and this defense is gonna fall soon, whatever Vincent does. Okay, we've been here. Actually, instead of dropping a pawn, Denis drops the lance. I believe his idea is to create somewhat a counter-attack just in case something happens, but of course it's not enough anymore. The engine suggests an immediate drop of a silver on 6-1, and it's absolutely fine since Vincent can afford sacrificing material here. Vincent trades his rook for the bishop. I think it's not necessary, but it's still pretty fine. So this allows him to capture this very important gold. And of course there is no any checkmates here. Yeah, from now on I think we can just watch the live stream because it's not much to analyze. Yeah, so Denis is pretty much out of pieces. There is no defense. The attack is not possible, so the only attack we've just watched is to drop the rook, but there is no checkmate here. And I guess this is a good point for him to concede, but I think he wants to make one or two more moves before doing that. Not sure exactly what Denis is thinking about right now. Seems like he just wants to use all the time has left before ending the game. It's been already almost 2 hours of us watching this game. I want to say thank you for joining and being with me. Even though Denis made a mistake early in the game, it was still interesting to watch how Vincent deals with the Anaguma castle and what techniques he used in order to do that. So we saw the edge attack, we saw this pressure from the rook on the right side, and he was slowly, piece by piece, brick by brick, just demolishing the fearless Anaguma castle. Always fun to watch. And Denis is running out of time right now. He's gonna just have one more additional minute. So he will be forced to either end the game or make a move, after which one the forced checkmate by Vincent will be implemented. Yeah, both players are very strong, and both showed some really good understanding of the opening, but sometimes mistakes are made, which make it difficult to transit your game into the end game in a good shape. The last 15 seconds for Denis, he will have to make a move now. So let's see what he chooses to do. He chooses to play this rook in defense, probably the only move he has. So Vincent now has a free to take knight on 5-1, and I think he will use this opportunity. But also there are some other moves like dropping a pawn on 9-4, right on the head of this unprotected knight. Vincent has all time of the world now to implement these final checkmating moves. Doesn't have to hurry. I think Vincent just wants to end it right here, right now, and he is not looking. So he is looking for a checkmate, and I'm not sure whether it's possible to implement it. Brinkmate is possible, but checkmate might be not. However, Vincent is really good in calculating such things, so I would be pleased to see him surprising me. Yeah, since Denis has this pawn drop on 8-1, checkmate is not possible for sure. But Vincent doesn't want to trade any rooks, he wants to play it safe, and that's why he's just dropping the generals. Denis is using all the chances he has and uses all the time he has, even though the position for him is desperate. I think the only move he has is gold 7-2-7-1, but he goes for more dangerous one, which is gonna lead to Hishi. It's a brinkmate. So let me quickly show you. But this move leads it to checkmate. Oops. And I think this is what Vincent is gonna do now. Vincent makes it even easier. He drops the silver on 7-1, and here Denis concedes. Right, so Vincent wins and saves his place in the finals of these playoffs. Vincent seemed to be happy. And a small announcement. Right, so this is the game we watched. So Vincent gets into the finals, and tomorrow this game is going to take place between me and Evgeny, and this is a quarterfinals game. It's going to be streamed by Anton Starikevich, and it's going to be streamed in English, if I heard it correctly. Karchitsky, Sergey, and Shcheslenak Petr are not going to play because Petr is not taking part in this tournament anymore. He went to a different country. So the winner of this game is gonna play with Sergey on the next week. Thank you everyone for joining, and see you